In student days, after being sent back to Rome to do more study after ordination, I was able to take advantage of the fact that quite a few churches in Rome would allow you to celebrate quietly around 7 in the morning if one had a proper certificate, the celebrate. And it was interesting to breathe in the centuries. Rome is full of eternity. It is not without reason that it is called the Eternal City. And so one can go from saint to saint, martyr to martyr, grace to grace, Paleo-Christian church to Paleo-Christian church, each with its groundedness in a fact, a moment, a saint, a grace that once hovered and brought that saint to glory. St. Lawrence has a church that actually was built as early as the very moment of cessation of persecution by Constantine himself. He was, of course, a very important Roman saint. He probably would have been Pope himself had he lived. He was very close to St. Sixtus, the Bishop of Rome of the time, and they were all caught celebrating secretly there in the catacombs, and St. Sixtus and the other deacons were martyred first, and St. Lawrence, because he was the main deacon and therefore had the purse strings, was kept for special treatment, excruciating torture, roasted slowly to death on a gridiron. We know what he's reported to have said: "You can turn me over now. I'm done on this side." It's possibly from there that the expression "happy as Larry" comes from. Well, he is portrayed in iconography with two things: that gridiron and also a chalice. The deacon was the minister of the chalice, and St. Augustine, preaching on this feast, notes how it is fitting that he should give his blood as he had handed on the blood of Christ. In the Catholic liturgy that we have in the West, we have the possibility of using, actually if we want to every time, the Roman canon, the only one that we had until the new formulae were given after the Second Vatican Council. And actually the Council Fathers themselves did not envisage creating new Eucharistic prayers. That was an afterthought. And they also presumed that it would always be said in Latin. In the Western Rite we have the link with the Roman Church because many of the early martyrs are named in it, and Lawrence, of course, is one. I remember praying in the Church of St. Lawrence, moved by the history over my head. The same in all these ancient churches in Rome. And in the freshness of ordination, one felt the power of the church that one belonged to. There is a continuity, of course, in Italy, which we have lost in Ireland, because the churches are still there. They didn't have the Protestant Reformation as we did here in Ireland. And one uses the old altars, actually quite often facing the other way if they're not the main altar. And there one sometimes even uses ancient chalices and ancient vestments. They're still around. Every time I would celebrate, for instance, in St. Mary Major's, around 7 in the morning, I would always have ancient things. They always had the old vestments there, and it was always facing the other way. And so there was a continuity there. It also hit me several times in Ireland itself. when, for instance, celebrating with the chalice of St. John Henry Newman in the church that he built in Dublin, using ancient vestments again, one felt, using the Tridentine rite, very much that time was standing still. Another time at Enniscorthy, celebrating in the very chapel made for the monks and used by them for 3 years by Blessed Columba Marmion, an Irish saint, a great Benedictine, the abbot of Maridsou, and a great author, still a staple diet actually in the monastic life to this day. We were given him to read, and he would have used that chalice presumably, and that altar and that chapel unchanged, now in a private house. And I was moved when I was celebrating on that altar. I could hear, as it were, the centuries over my head. Time doesn't exist at the altar, and we do well not to make it exist by measuring our celebrations with a stopwatch. The same occurred in the Holy Land, and I recalled how waiting in the sacristy to celebrate in the Holy Grotto at Bethlehem, we had to wait for the Greeks to finish, and the ancient status quo is maintained. The Latins enter when the Greeks have finished. It just goes on generation after generation, but there time stands still as well. The Latin is still used in these places, as the Greeks still use Greek. And one feels that we need perhaps to calm down and not improve on history. There is one thing that we need to learn precisely from our Eastern brethren. It's this, that liturgy is not our possession, that it's not ours to tamper with and traffic with. It is received. And one reason why the East has fewer casualties than the West in this one is that precisely those who are in charge, the bishops, come from the monastic world because of the rule of celibacy for bishops. They're all in practice high-powered men of prayer, monks. They're formed in hours and hours of long, calm, interiorized liturgy, unchanged, and that no one would ever think of changing. It's referred to as the divine liturgy, and to tamper with it would be for them a very serious sacrilege. Whereas we, if we're interesting as priests, want to improve and show how brilliant we are. We'd be far more brilliant if we disappeared and let the Lord be the centre of attention. How many graces are deflected by wanting to excel when actually we're excelling in pride? And so I was moved after being there at the altar of Blessed Columba Marmion, as I had been at the altar of John Henry Newman. And I paused and wrote these lines, transported for a second outside our known time. Singed by rays felt during the Missa Cantata at Blessed Columba's altar. What is a place, a spot upon the globe that onward turns and pauses for no man? What is it yet to wear? An ancient robe, and stand upon a step that stepping can from buried time yet here? What is a stone hewn well to hold high force, hid workings strange? What is, I say, a place to stand alone upon a land once known, 'neath the old rays' range? 'Tis to be on a moving aeon still, unshoved by hurry's haste. 'Tis to lean on a second as it comes. 'Tis to let thrill old tingles that once passed. For here's redone a work that once worked well, and works again with ancient mastery. We thought too